Why does the West recognise Kosovo as a state, but not Palestine? At first glance, both states involve disputed territory and claims of self-determination. So what's different about them? So for some very brief history, Kosovo has a lengthy history of being an area contested by both Albania and Serbia. But that's another topic in and of itself, so let's focus on when Kosovo was an autonomous province within Serbia inside of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in the latter half of the 20th century. 1989, Serbian President Milosevic stripped Kosovo of its autonomous status, gradually integrating it into the Serbian state and increasing tensions between the mostly ethnically Albanian Kosovans who wanted to break away and ethnic Serbs. This led to war between the Kosovo Liberation Army and the Serbian government in 1998. Following the brutal repression of the Serbian government, NATO intervened in 1999 after failed peace talks. NATO launched airstrikes which ended Serbia's control over Kosovo and placed the territory under UN administration, but Kosovo was still legally part of the Serbian state. Now, during this war, hundreds of thousands of Kosovans were displaced, fleeing the atrocities of Milosevic's army. So from 1999 until 2008, Kosovo was administered by the UN, during which time it developed its own institutions. These talks between the Serbian government and Kosovans ultimately failed, and so in 2008, the Kosovan parliament declared independence from Serbia. Many European powers, including the United States, recognized Kosovo, but Serbia staunchly rejected it, claiming that it was an illegal declaration. Okay, so what about Palestine? Palestine also has a very lengthy history, but let's trace this modern conflict back roughly to the end of the British Mandate and the 1948 war, which led to Israel's declaration of independence and the mass displacement of over 700,000 Palestinians. Today, Palestine seeks statehood, primarily in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Over 150 UN member states recognize the state of Palestine, but many Western countries, like the United States, have not recognized it, and it's taken some others, like the UK, only up until last year to recognize Palestine. Why haven't they recognized Palestine, and what's the difference between Palestine and Kosovo? Well, the West usually cites Kosovo as being a unique post-conflict case that has experienced ethnic cleansing, a NATO intervention, UN administration, and a failed final status negotiation. This means that independence is therefore the only option for them. Critics argue if self-determination justifies Kosovo, then why can't the same principle be applied to Palestine? Secondly, the West view Kosovo as a territory that has been governed by the UN for so long that it ended up developing its own institutions, making reintegration into Serbia highly unrealistic and therefore independence the only viable solution. In contrast, Palestine has never been fully under UN transitional administration in the same way. Rather, it has mostly been under occupation, especially Gaza, meaning that for the West, Palestinian statehood must come from a negotiated two-state settlement with Israel. Thirdly, Western governments often discuss Palestine in the context of regional security concerns in the Middle East. They argue that recognition without a negotiated settlement would undermine Israel's security in the Middle East. This is especially so as peace talks have usually stalled when it has come to the topics of final borders, the status of Palestinian refugees, and the question of Jerusalem. But critics would argue that Kosovo's independence came without the negotiation with Serbia, and despite that, Western powers recognized it anyway, despite the volatile security situation in the Balkans. Finally, there is a question of geopolitical alliances, which is perhaps the most cited factor when comparing Kosovo with Palestine. For the West, Kosovo's independence made sense following NATO's intervention, and it aligned with their broader strategy to stabilize the Balkans. Palestine's recognition, however, involves one of the West's closest regional allies, Israel. Critics would therefore argue that strategic geopolitical alliances influence recognition more than consistently applying international law. So are these two cases distinct, or does geopolitics shape which states get independence?